on right now.
Yeah, sounds good.
Well, what do you got going on that's new right now?
Uh, I mean, it's hard to be optimistic at all right now with this weather. It's just unbelievable. We had like that 2 week stretch of such good weather in late August and like that first maybe I don't know week or two of September, and then it just got so cruddy and um hot, But so I'm
Yeah.
trying not to really do too much right now because you hate to like just ruin some spots. Because I know the movement is just so slow and everything right now. But there's like little, like you see little pockets of some of these big deer moving and stuff. But so I don't really know this. I mean, just staying on the white oaks. I've been hunting kind of spots that I usually wouldn't hunt, a little bit lower, around water and stuff like that. So a lot of this like early season stuff seems like it's always hit or miss and just playing like these little fronts that come through and stuff like that. Um and it's hard if you don't like live where you hunt, where you can just or maybe hunt like after work or hunt, you see that good weather coming and capitalize on it. But
What have you been hunting? You're kind of talking about like not wanting to, you probably have your handful of spots that set up a certain way, whether that's, wind or time of year. But so are you just like hunting new spots that you haven't quite learned yet? Or
no,
kind of just like,
well
or trying to just stand
I've only
back?
hunted twice this year.
Okay.
2 Saturdays, but um so, I mean, yeah, I have tons of different places that I could go, and actually, that like the winds that we did have were ideal to hunt this place, um, and I did the deer that I am looking to kill this year. He should probably already be dead. I
Right.
saw him on the first, or I hunted opening weekend on Saturday morning. And I had an encounter with a really big, it's probably 140 some inch 10 pointer. And I was backwards on my tree. I had my shirt off in the freaking tree. And I could hear him in front of, like, a deer in front of me. I turned around and it was like right after first light. He was standing there like, I don't know, a few yards just looking straight at me. And I don't think I was going to shoot him anyways, but, and then in the evening when I got set up, I just the right when I got set up, I was so shocked that I think it might have just been, it was so hot that they were going to water and I was hunting on water, and pretty much the exact same scenario where I was in the tree kind of just messing around, like getting everything set up, and my bow and my backpack were still on the ground attached to my rope. And then I turned around and that giant buck that I'm hunting, which he's got to be borderline 180 inches. He's huge. And he was standing there at 2 bucks, standing there at like 10 yards. I just couldn't believe that I wasn't really even expecting to see him. It was just kind of a place that I had never even been before. I was just looking at the map on like where I thought maybe he would end up at that evening to go to
So
water.
you were more hunting his destination. You figured he would get there at some point, but you didn't think that necessarily you were like right next to where he was bedding.
Well, I was going off, so I jumped that deer. It was really similar conditions. It was an east wind, like an east southeast wind. It was a warmer day, and we had literally exact same conditions. And I jumped him down in this big hub in the bottom, and I was really shocked by that where he was bedded. And I'm sure he's not going to be bedded here during later into the fall at all. And but I'm like, there's a good chance, like there's a lot of really good cover around there, and you know it, there really hasn't been any pressure yet so far. So I'm like, there's a really good chance that's where he's going to be again with these conditions. Which, so like outside of that hub, there is water right there, but it's in a bad spot for him. Like it's really open. I'm like, I just cannot see him leaving that hub and going out into that wide open to get water, he's probably going to follow the bottom of this hill. There's like it's a really steep side hill, but there's like a small, real small bench, like right on the bottom of that hill. And so it's like 250 yards from where I was. And then it like it comes out into this like thick tree line that's like all full of weeds and stuff. And there's like some CRP fields there. And I'm like, if he's in that hub, this is where he's going to go to water because he's so hidden here. And that's literally exactly what happened. He popped right out on the base of that side hill and like was walking into my lap. So, I mean, that really sucked, but I wasn't too beat up over it or anything. So,
Right. And you said was one of the deer you seen was like one of the ones that you were kind of going to chase this year or going to try to.
yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha. So before we get too far into the weeds, I'm sure people have probably heard other podcasts with you on. You've kind of made your rounds the last
Mhm.
few years, it seems like. At least I've heard a few of your other ones. But maybe just introduce yourself a little bit. Let
Mhm.
everybody know what kind of terrain you hunt or your experience a little bit, maybe what you do for work that allows you to get out, stuff like that.
Yeah, so my name's Tony. I live here in Wisconsin, kind of like northeast Wisconsin, not far from Green Bay. I do sewer and water work, so we pretty much we start up usually like late February, and then we go until kind of varies, usually like after Christmas or, sometimes into January. So then a lot of times I'll have off all winter if I want, and then I'll trap coyotes and stuff in the wintertime, and I'm just always, out in the woods scouting, and I do a lot of shed hunting and stuff like that too. So get a lot of time in the woods every year. Um, I've been I'm 35 right now. I've been hunting since I was 12. I kind of grew up hunting. I mean, our scenario is really similar because I think you grew up hunting like North Woods type stuff.
Yeah, I'm originally from the northern part of the state, now more
Yeah.
transition to hill country, southwest, so pretty
Yeah.
similar.
Yeah, I would love to live in that stuff, and maybe someday I will. But yeah, so I grew up hunting big woods, northern Wisconsin, massive, tracts of timber, and just totally different than,
Yeah.
like Wisconsin has like a big variety of different types of things you could hunt. Well, most states I'm sure do, but so I hunted. I went into the Marine Corps when I got out of high school, and then after that, I had a lease for a little while, kind of like central Wisconsin with some of my buddies, and which was super fun. We did, all the food plots and habitat stuff, and then the guy ended up selling the place. So then I started hunting public again, and I was hunting like a lot of marshes and stuff like that, like central Wisconsin kind of. And then eventually made my way out to the hills. I ran cameras in hill country for a lot of years. So even when I was like hunting in the marshes, like every year I would run probably, I don't know, 8, 10 cameras. I'd put them out like in the early season. I'd pick them up after like or before gun season usually.
Mhm.
So I was like already starting to learn, about hunting out in the hills. And then but yeah, so now I've been hunting in the hills for I'm not really sure how many years now, but I love it. Better. I mean, the caliber of animal is higher. There's not necessarily more deer. There's a lot of counties in Wisconsin that have tons and tons of deer and really good bucks too. And maybe it's easier hunting too. I just really like
Yeah.
hunting on the hills. I just enjoy it a lot. So
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, that kind of reminds me of kind of like how I grew up. I mean, we have a farm up north and my family still owns an old dairy farm, and it's
Mhm.
probably 240-ish acres altogether.
Yeah,
And I mean, pretty much just our family lives on that road, so we have quite
that's
a bit, I
sweet.
guess. So grew up kind of lucky that way. It's been okay hunting up there with the wolves and everything else. It's kind of
Yeah.
tough. And then since moving here, it's just, I would agree with you where I don't necessarily think there's more deer in maybe the southern part of the state, but
Mhm.
the trophy quality and the mature buck to deer or doe ratio is definitely higher.
Yeah.
Just from the few years I've been here, I've had opportunities at very nice deer each year. So, and just getting to very briefly learn the area and the terrain, it's completely different. And
Yeah.
getting opportunities without really know what I'm doing and kind of doing a lot of stuff wrong, that just kind of shows what there is and the opportunity that's here. But so I'm
Yeah.
super fortunate, but there's so much to learn in the hills. And I feel like once you kind of, not that you ever master it completely,
Hmm.
but it just seems like it's so applicable to once you figure stuff out in the hills, you can kind of use that just about anywhere. And
Yeah.
it's just at a more of a micro scale.
Hmm.
So I guess I kind of wanted to have you on just because maybe selfishly you hunt a lot of the same terrain that I do,
Yeah.
but
Even the same
I kind of just,
properties.
yeah, yeah, right. I've run into you. You've been on some of my cameras, and I'm sure um I kind of thought it was funny. It was a couple weeks ago that I'm like, yeah, this guy looks kind of familiar because we've talked on Instagram or like over Messenger before,
Yeah.
and I was like, yeah, it's kind of funny. So
Yeah, I run a lot of cameras on a lot of different places, and most I'll never hunt or whatever. But I like to just maybe one year there was a big deer on there, or there was, I thought maybe there was something big in there, and it's just nice to have like a huge variety of properties that when there is a big deer there, then you have a hand like a little bit of a handle on the property. Like I wish I had this year on this place with this big deer. I don't really know anything about it. I never have been on it with the leaves off. So it's, it makes it a lot harder, which I enjoy. I like that it's, trying to chase around a big deer without knowing the place. It's fun. But yeah, having a lot of options at your disposal. And a lot of times you think, oh, I have so many, or at least I think I have so many places to hunt. And then a lot of times it's like getting towards like the end and you're like hemming and hawing on where you should hunt, or, this place has been blown up, this has happened or whatever, or
yeah,
so.
you can never really have too many spots, but it
Mhm.
seems that sometimes. I know when I first started running more cameras and taking the approach of soaking them and just taking the intel at the end of the year and just using those dates maybe, or kind of
Yeah.
how the deer use that area for the next year, not necessarily, real time hunting it right then when I check that card or whatever. So it's kind of different for me to do that, to kind of trust yourself and kind of say, okay, I know these deer last year used this area this week or on these conditions. Like, how do you look at that? Is that kind of how you go about it? Or,
Sometimes when it comes to like a certain deer, I do that, especially like when he shifts, and because a lot of these deer that I've kept tabs on over the years, they do things like to the day, like especially like the major things, like when they leave, like a buck that I know of, he'd summer on this property, he'd be there all fall, and then it was like the 10th of November, like, once he bred his, like, harem of does, he would, there was plenty more does to be bred. He would bounce out of there, and then he would go, it was probably over 3 miles, and then that's where he would spend his winter, which is crazy, like, so far away. Like, he'd cross the highway, like, in two different spots. So there's scenarios like that too where, keeping tabs on, like, an individual deer, but a lot of it in the hills too has to do on like the mass crop and just like the crop rotations and stuff. So a lot of that, can kind of throw you off because they're just like in general areas, or like that maybe there's way more activity on these, this ridge or these few points just because the white oaks were just ringing in that year or something. But basically I'm using like my cameras for the most part. It's already like in the past to me, even like a cell camera, like it's already happened. So I'm always just trying to be like a step ahead. Most of my intel is for the following year, just basically like where the best, buck bedding is and where the best doe bedding is and things like that. I don't really want to get like wrapped up in using like cell cameras and stuff to like tell me like, oh, there's a buck that I want to kill here, like he just came through here and I'm gonna set up on them, which I'm not knocking anyone that does that at all. It just, I don't know, it just seems slightly unethical to me, but I
Yeah,
I don't I mean, there's totally different scenarios. Like if you had like a food plot or something and like, you lit your cabins right there or something. I wouldn't call it unethical, but I just don't wanna, you know, eventually, like, you have to draw the line somewhere with, like, hunting. There's so many crazy things that, like, are constantly coming out and, like, making it even, like, the new, like everyone has, like, access to, like, LiDAR and stuff now, and I'm, like, looking at that. I just, recently started looking at it this year, and I'm like, "Man, this is, like,
if you
slam
know
these
how to use
spots." I'm
it,
like,
it's
"These are, like,
like
slam dunk rut spots." Like, this is a s like, you don't even
yeah,
have to ever show up to the place, and I can put my finger on the map and be like, if you sit here for 2 days on a northwest wind, it's like automatic. It has
yeah,
like, you can't see that stuff unless you're there in person, and,
yeah.
it's amazing, like, technology and stuff, but I don't know, like, same with, like, crossbows and stuff like that, like, I'm not gonna, knock anyone for if it's legal in your state to do something.
It's bigger than an individual person because it's a
Right.
bigger issue. Like it's legal, so you can only,
Yeah.
it's legal, so you can. I mean, it's you can't really knock anybody from using the stuff,
Yeah.
but it's just like what doesn't fall in line with what you want to get out of the sport and
Yeah,
why
whatever
you
hunting
do
it
it.
means
So
to you,
yeah,
that's on you, and, I just like the chase and the everything about hunting outside of even being in a tree. I just love the whole, chasing around a deer and stuff like that. And I don't want to be like, oh, he walked by my cell cam. I'm going to go set up there and then kill him. And which would be awesome. But I mean, I just, wouldn't get as much out of it, I think. I don't know.
and I've been there, done that, and going back to the cell camera thing. Like I said, they're legal. I use them
Hmm.
and I have them. I last year I almost or the year before last year I should say almost strictly used them when I was first moved to the area,
Yeah.
or just because I spread them. I had such a cast with such a wide net, and it seemed like every single place I was hunting was at least 45 minutes to an hour away.
Hmm.
It made you sleep better at night because going in when you're going to hunt, because you only have certain select days you can hunt, that,
Yeah.
man, there's something in this area. But the more and more that I use them, just confirms what you said. It's like, if you really think about it,
Hmm.
he may be in the area, but he's coming through a specific area only so often.
Yeah.
And when you get them on the camera and anybody that's ran enough cameras knows that they catch a fraction of what actually is there
Yeah.
for sure. Cause
They're a
I've
good
sat
confidence booster for sure, though, just to have
and
that,
that's about it.
just some reassurance. But yeah, a lot of times they'll steer you in the wrong direction too, where you think you have a camera in such a good spot up on this ridge or something, and then maybe it's just so slow up there, and it's like such a killer time of the year, and it'll steer you away from hunting. You're like, man, I wish I could hunt that spot, but it's just been real cruddy up there. And I've so many times, like last year in Iowa, where I had like two cameras on a ridge, and I was there hunting it. It was like November 7th or whatever, or I don't remember what day it was, but there was so much action, like bucks fighting. There's just, the amount of
And you
bucks that
had
I
it
saw that day, and I had like a picture of like a doe, and
on
it
the
was, like, the
camera.
most action I've ever had in my life, and I'm like, "Man, you
That's
would think that this date was the worst November 7th ever up here on this ridge."
yeah.
So,
So that's thing too that now when I go scout, it seems like there's cell cameras everywhere. Like I would say 80% of cameras that I see, at least
yeah.
in the spots that I'm going, I see now are on public land or cell cameras,
Mhm,
just because they're so affordable now and whatever. I won't
mhm,
get it too far into that rabbit hole, but um, I almost like seeing cell cameras. It's getting to the point because I know that there's very few people that know how to use them correctly and hunt
yeah,
off of them. That
mhm,
it's like they're probably doing exactly what I used to do, and
yeah,
they're kind of chasing pictures and chasing their tail a little bit. So it
yeah,
kind of, whether it's shows me where not to be, or it kind of makes me smile a little bit when I see them now, because I I don't necessarily think that, oh, I can't hunt here, or this spot's ruined, Because,
Mhm.
okay, they put this camera here when they haven't been in here messing it up necessarily until they get a camera or a picture of something, which in a lot of those
Mhm.
spots, you just know they're not going to. So
Yeah,
it's not
and a
really
lot of
anything you
the
got to
sign
worry about.
like, you running a SD card camera, when I'm like, a lot of times I'll go, like, hunt a property, and then I'll check an SD card camera, and usually, like, you'll see all the sign like, you're picking up on sign that you never would know of or whatever as you're going to check a camera, so you're just being out there, and, like, those guys are never if their camera's not in the ideal spot, they're gonna miss all that sign or that like you'll be like, oh, I'm gonna move this camera because I can tell like these bucks are using this area or whatever. So a lot of times, that guy's just waiting on, something to tell him to go hunt that place.
And
And
I
yeah.
kind of have a short little side story, and I'm not going to get like too far into the details because I'm going to do a separate podcast about like a hunt recap that I had this last week. But um, exactly that same scenario. Uh, this off season, just after turkey season, I went to the spot that I'd never been before. Kind of just map scouted it, went in, ended up hanging an SD cam on what I thought was a good hub scrape, and like this kind of scrubbier apple tree. And they had like four different scrapes all under every one of the branches, and it was pretty torn up. And there was historical big sign and big sign all around that. Like you could tell there was bucks spending a lot of time there hitting that scrape pretty much all year by the looks of it. So I hung a cam on it, and I never really had a chance this year. I've had my wedding, a couple other weddings to do end of the summer. I never got in there to check it before like a time where I thought, okay, it's probably pretty too close to the season. I'm going to go in there and check it when I throw a first good hunt at it first. So this was last week, either Wednesday or Thursday. I can't really remember what day it was, but I went in the morning. It's set up right for the wind and everything to get in there. And then I was going to check that camera on my access out, and walking in there in the dark, I hit like this big rub line,
Mhm.
and it was not super far from where that camera was, but I was definitely off of it enough where I kind of thought if they were going to skirt that camera that they probably would. And it made sense because he hit that big rub line probably within 100 yards of that camera location, but it was in a much thicker location where I kind of figured they'd be. So I
Mhm.
set up there, and right at first light had a small buck come in, and he kind of got down below me to where he winded me.
Mhm.
Or he didn't really wind me, he didn't know what I was, and then kind of worked off. But I could have shot him if I wanted to because I kind of seen him coming in. And right when he hit my thermals, I could have drew and shot him there if he was a bigger buck.
Mhm.
But then at like 7:30, I just caught movement kind of towards that scrape, but I was kind of on a transition line to where it got super thick, where that rub line kind of ran out, and there was
Mhm.
standing corn above me, and that rub line kind of ran that transition line out of the corn, kind of coming down. I think there was probably white oaks down in the bottom that they were going to, whether it was
Mhm.
at night or whatever. But I hadn't checked that camera to know really, really much. So I was kind of assuming whatever made those rubs around the camera, but I didn't know. So caught that movement at like 7:30. That buck came right down that rub line, right, right below me. Not to ruin it, but ended up making a poor shot. Didn't end up finding the deer, but he was a really, really nice deer.
That was
Had
this year?
that was last week,
Oh, really?
and real nice buck. Didn't never had pictures of him. Like I said, I'd never been in that area before, but I would assume that one made the big sign that
Uh-huh.
I found walking in the morning. And I walked in the dark, so I kind of like just kind of half-assed set up, did
Right.
the best I could for what I found there. So he worked right down kind of how you would draw it up, gave me a great shot, screwed it up on my end. Come to find out today, not to be that guy, but my bow was hitting about 4 inches low when I shot it today.
Uh-huh.
So I kind of was kicking myself about that. That's something that's preventable and whatnot. But to get back to the point of the story, like I said, I'll get into details about that hunt, whatever, in a different podcast. But that camera that's probably 80 yards as a crow flies from that very, very good rub line, there was not one picture of that buck that I missed, and the smaller buck even that came in earlier.
Yeah.
and they
They
were
could have been
in that
bucks too
area very, very
that
close.
just shifted, like they were gone all, all winter. And, like I would say probably, there's a lot of bucks that they don't show up until they're like the day after their velvet's off or whatever. So maybe he was just there for, a week or 10 days. And then like maybe he eventually would have been on that camera and he was just, hadn't been in there long enough yet. He had that rub line through there or whatever. And yeah, but that goes to show though, like, sometimes, and there's a lot of, I think it just takes years too of running cameras and scouting and knowing like the spots where there's places where you're going to get every deer on a camera.
I think what's
Sometimes I see a camera in the woods. I'm like, I couldn't even pick a worse. This has got to be like the worst
what are you
possible
looking at?
spot, or it's like what it's facing at. I'm like, I don't even know what this guy's even doing here
Yeah.
or what this camera. But so yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just
It's
being
just
out there.
learning.
Yeah,
My biggest like red light bulb, I guess, in the last couple of years has been figuring out what sign to set right up over and then the sign to hunt off of or how to hunt off of that sign. I feel like a lot of guys find fresh sign and they maybe set up not even fresh sign, I guess. Like in that scenario, I feel like a lot of people would have just assumed that scrape was getting hammered and set up right over that camera and over that scrape. Whereas I feel like just learning how to maybe hunt that spot, even though it doesn't look great, but hunt just off of a certain piece of sign or a certain area, kind of
yeah,
just making like maybe micro adjustments. I
yeah,
feel like I was that guy to like hunt right over like a open scrape or like hunting over the wrong thing almost.
yeah. And to me, like sign is great and everything. I like basically like a lot of times how I'm looking at things is once I know a deer exists, a certain deer exists that I want to potentially kill, like that's really all that matters to me. And so that when I'm going in a hunt like earlier in the year like this, or even into like mid to late October, I'm just thinking like where is that buck at right now? Like, where is he bedded? Where did he bed today? Where's what's the closest I can get to him, and where is the most likely spot that I can get that deer killed? And so the biggest piece of sign for me is just tracks. So, especially like a lot of times I feel like I'm accessing through a ditch from where I'm like really hidden so that you're going like up a ditch and he's bedded somewhere above you. And you have a lot of ditch crossings that you're in the ditch and then you can stop in the ditch and actually look at the tracks and like see a lot of times where you find his track on which ditch crossing, like that's going to tell you which, sometimes you don't know which point he's actually on or whatever. But the rub lines and stuff, yeah, that matters. I mean, that matters to me, but it all depends on like where the rub line is. Like, is it a rub line coming out of his bedding area? That's important. Is it a rub line going through the bottom? Is it a rub line like along food or where he's like traveling at night? Like, so a lot of those things just get thrown out the window because they don't really matter to me at all. Like
There
where,
has to be like there has to be like multiple pieces that line up, and that's part of the puzzle almost. Because like you
yeah,
just said, rubs a lot of time. If you walk through the woods down here the second week in November, there's rubs. Literally, you can do a
yeah.
360 and call it 10 rubs. Not all of them mean
And
anything.
if you haven't really, don't have a lot of experience hunting in general or hunting in the hills, like a lot of it can really just kind of throw you off and confuse you. And cameras can really confuse a guy too in the hills because um it'll really I mean you'll think he's doing something. It's hard to wrap your head around what he's actually doing. Um so yeah, to me, it's like where is the spot that I can most likely like catch him getting out of bed and what's he gonna do? So if you don't have any experience like on a certain property, it's gonna be a little bit harder. But if once I have the bedding areas like scouted and I know like he's most likely gonna be bedded in one of these spots, 4 or 5 different spots or whatever, then I'm just using my best judgment on where I think he is and a lot of times maybe you are maybe you're set up in the correct spot to get that deer killed, and somehow you tipped him off, or you tipped another deer off, or he didn't get up. A lot of times if the conditions just aren't, it's early in the year, there's no reason for him to get up like super early. Maybe he gets up 5 minutes before last light and just stands there and eats white oaks for a little while and then goes out, about his the rest of his evening. So a lot of times you might be spot on. And then you're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, man, I set up in a bad spot." It's like, "No, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you were in this kill spot. It was just the wrong day."
The wrong day, you accessed it improperly, just something you might have been in the right spot that he would
Yeah.
have came through there, but maybe just the little details maybe were
Yeah.
missed. I feel like that
And
happens a
sometimes
lot, and then
it
people
can
get
be so
discouraged.
minimal where, like, you didn't bust him, but just something where he was unsure about it. And that's, like, all it takes is, like, a little bit of sometimes it can be good too where, like, curiosity, like a doe blowing or something, sometimes, like, a big buck will come and investigate that too, like, so but, yeah, it's kinda just it's a lot harder when you have not scouted a property and know the bedding and, all the sign is great and everything, and if you think it's there's a giant scrape there and you think you can kill that deer in the daylight on that scrape, then by all means, the easiest spot you think you can kill that deer, if you think you can kill him on a field edge, then sit to fit the field edge, like, there's no reason to, you know, kill him off his back porch if you don't have to.
Right. Um, so there's a couple things I kind of want to hit in more detail just about like your system of getting on bigger deer. So when let's say you go to like a brand new property that you've never been to before, you kind of hinted at it maybe a little bit, but are you going starting low and like checking those low areas for whether that's a track or sign like scrapes in the bottom, or are you going like ridge line up top? Do you start high or low when you're trying to start somewhere?
I guess every property is so different. You kind of know that too, where with how the access and everything lays out. But yeah, I'll have ideas in my like. Say it's a bigger property where it's I don't know, like 800 acres or something, and where it would take you a while to scout it all. I'll go to like the big hubs and look at those where it should just be ripped to shreds in there, and you're gonna see. Um, if there's like there's gonna be lots of buck sign, but hopefully there's some like really big buck sign there. And if I really like it, then I'll kind of work my way up in check out like like the spots around that top third where all like the majority of the travel and the bedding is gonna be, and I'll look at some of the stuff up on top. Um, but yeah, once I have a good idea that there is something like really big there or has been in the past. A lot of times you'll see like rubs from like 2 or 3 years ago that were just like on these magnum trees and you're like,
Hmm.
yeah, I haven't seen any of that. That deer is most likely dead, but still that means a lot to me that, a property held something like absolutely giant
Hmm.
because, deer like that, if they don't live on a place unless there's a reason for them to live there. And so yeah, and a lot of times like those where like those mega giant bucks are living is not like the stereotypical places too. Sometimes they just really throw you for a loop. Like sometimes they are like right out on the top third out on a point, exactly boom, like that's where he likes to spend a lot of his time. But sometimes it's not like that. It's like in these weird spots, like these little like knob off the side of a hill, like where it's just crazy steep, and then there'll be like a little spot for him, or like, a big root ball like in a ditch head. And whereas or a lot of times like it's in bowls or like spot where basically when you get in the spot where a giant like that likes to spend some time, you like know right away because you're like, man, he has everything, like every advantage you could possibly dream up, and you'll sit there forever and be like, I don't even know if anyone could kill him here unless like there's so few, the scenarios where you could get that deer killed, and it's like splitting hairs with them, until you start getting into like late October or when he's like, maybe coming back to bed later in the morning, or sometimes there's spots where then you can just like, put your wind somewhere where he can't get you. But usually though, you can tell like right away where, he's spending a lot of time.
And I mean, there's a reason that he's not dead at that point. Like when you get to those really big mature deer, there's a good chance that 99% of the time he is unkillable,
Yeah.
where it's kind of just chasing that 1%. And that's why it sounds like you are very calculated on your sits almost. It's
Mhm.
not like you're just pounding out a spot every single day for,
I usually do. I am pretty aggressive with stuff, but when it comes to like the heat and stuff like that, I just don't want to. I just know that they don't. If any creature in the woods doesn't want to be moving a lot, it's a big buck. It's not because they hate it as much as I do. You can see it when they're moving around, even at night when it's at the coolest time, like 5 o'clock in the morning, their mouths open and they're like, just you can just see it on their face, like, "Man, this sucks," and then you get that little, like, weather change, so even, like, 7, 8 degrees, like, we had, today out in the hills, and it was, like, significant difference, you could see it. So and it's just, there's a lot of moisture in the air, and it's just really tough to they can smell so good. Like, yeah, the thermals are different too with the heat, but it is an opportunity to kill one like over, take some guys are really good at hunting stuff like this hot weather stuff. Like thrive on it. Like Jake Bush, when I talk to him, those are like his best hunts. And I'm like, man,
yeah,
I just don't enjoy it at all. The experience for me is even, I just don't I hate summertime and stuff. So, I mean, I would be happy shooting a big buck this weekend, don't get me wrong, but it's not the end of the world if
right,
I don't. So,
right. So to get maybe more of like your answer to that, I guess,
yeah,
that
that was
question
I
about
just
like,
kind of went off on a huge tangent
no,
there.
I kind of did it to you. What's your philosophy as far as say you know there's a bigger buck in an area? I know it's dependent on the time of year. Obviously, their patterns change, whether that's from food source or just, the rut kicking in, whatever, how much ground
Mhm,
that buck specifically covers, because every buck's different, how far they move.
mhm.
But what's your philosophy as far as kind of hunting the edges and moving in towards where you think a buck is, or being super aggressive and like hammering out a spot? I know it's more common during the rut to just like sit a spot you know he's going to come through for a week on end. Like, are
Mhm.
you that type of guy if you think that'll kill a
No.
specific buck, or are you changing where you're at kind of every day if you're not seeing what you want to see?
Yeah, I rarely ever maybe I should more often, but I rarely ever sit in the same tree twice. I think like last year in Iowa, I did that for the first time in a lot of years where hunted the same tree like 2 days in a row. But yeah, a lot of times I'm just assuming, which maybe this is just in my head, but a lot of times I just assume that once I hunted a spot and I know that buck is using that area and I didn't kill him or I didn't see him, I know he's gonna be in there and he's gonna cut my ground scent and he's gonna figure out what I was doing. And some bucks are not like that, but a lot of bucks are. Like they'll cut your ground scent and then sometimes they'll just go out to wherever they're going, like go out to feed but it's like in the back of their head. And then once they get back in there, they're gonna follow you around to your everything you did. And I think the gig is up and you almost have to sometimes you can capitalize on, say you hunt a tree like twice. I assume that deer has understanding of kind of what was going on there, and you can kind of capitalize on hunting a different spot in that same area where like he's going to be kind of on the lookout for you, or like, trying to, or like scent checking that tree or that area that you had just spent some time in. And if you kind of think about that, how he would do that, maybe you can be on like the downwind side of him, or I also do that too sometimes when it's like, say it's before like gun season or something, and I know I just have minimal days left, and I'm don't really know exactly where a buck is. I think he's like in one of four different bedding areas. I will walk through um a bunch of the bedding areas that I think that he might be in, and I will like leave two alone, and then I assume he's not going to be in those bedding areas that I had purposely like walked through. If that makes any sense. So
So
I
you're
kind of like
almost like
stack the deck like where um and kind of put everything in my favor. Like I'm like, there's no possible way he's gonna bed in any of those spots because I just put my ground scent everywhere in there.
I
And
guess
then
that's one way to
yeah.
eliminate, like, if you plant that kind of makes sense. You almost gotta, like, try to get into their head, even though it seems like
Yeah,
it's just
they're
not
not
possible
some
sometimes,
people
but
think they're like some intelligent animal, which I think we give them a lot more credit than they deserve. They have incredible senses, but I don't really think they have like this extreme ability to reason, you know? Sometimes I think
yeah.
we think that they can, but
I mean, their goal is pretty straightforward. When you think about it, I mean,
yeah.
it's to eat, to breed, to,
Yeah.
and stay
Their
away from
association,
people.
they are able to associate things very quickly though, like with danger and like that's how you see it with trail cameras all the time. Like some, deer see trail cameras and they don't, a lot of deer don't associate it with any type of danger, but there's, the other 50% of the deer, like they know they've seen those before, they've smelled people there, they've seen a guy like hunting where that trail camera was or whatever, and they boom, like they see it and they're like out of there. So, in like the early season, a lot of or places where there's a lot of like human activity, that a lot of times I hate hunting stuff like that where there's not like hunting, a lot of it's not hunting pressure, but there's just those deer see people, they hear loud equipment and stuff, and there's a lot of areas where they expect to smell people and it's not a big deal to them at all. But there's certain areas where they do not expect, like right in their bedding area. And then but they smell you there, it's a big deal.
It's almost like you have to, in those areas where they're so used to that, you almost have to hunt them dumber.
Yeah, a little bit. The areas like the human where there's, it's common for them to smell people, like use that to your advantage too, to like
Mhm.
access and stuff as or stay on that as much as possible. So it's not like they don't like that smelling that, but it's not a huge deal to them. So you can squeeze more out of that property.
Well, for example, how many times have you, like, these hunting areas that have these, I don't wanna say nice, but somewhat
Yeah.
maintained roads that go all the way to the back, where it's
Mhm.
like, man, it's hard. You look at it and it's like, there's deer here, like, and then you assume danger when you think of that mowed trail. Where how
Yeah.
many times walking in the morning or walking out, there's deer crossing that,
I
scent
know.
checking it, standing right in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to be
Some
always
people and
very
like
far after that, off of that, I
around
guess.
here, like in Wisconsin, like you don't really see guys hunting like on a road like that, very rarely. And you would see guys like when I was in Iowa, like if you were like a local Iowa resident, that's like how they would set up. They would like have a 5 gallon bucket, like they would just plop it down on the road. And these guys,
Yeah.
how many years they've been killing like giant bucks over in spots like that. And guys from like out east or in Michigan or all these other places where we have tons of hunting pressure, like they'll get their Iowa tag and they're like, never in a million years would I set up in a spot like that. But sometimes you have to think about things differently in different spots and stuff, or like time of year, early season where the deer haven't been pressured, maybe you can kill one like that, or
Yeah.
you say you see a giant track that's crossing a road, or gets on the road for 50 yards and then he zigzags and then he gets back off the road. Maybe just plop a camera down there for a week or whatever and see maybe it's an opportunity to get one killed like that. You know,
Right.
sometimes you just have to kind of think outside the box or it's not always you get stubborn in your ways or you think there's no way I'm going to kill one here. And sometimes you can. I want to say like Andre DeQuisto back in the day when he killed like one of the, I can't remember if it was like the number two typical ever killed in Wisconsin. I want to say that he shot that like over a logging road in like some super, well traveled like logging road. And he like knew that deer was crossing that road. And he killed it right over that. It was like, I can't remember how big it was. It was an absolute mega giant, but
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like the more time goes on, it's at least for me, I just overthink stuff so much.
yeah,
Sometimes
for
you just
sure.
need to just when you have a rough season, it really hits you where it's
Mhm.
like, man, if I just like would go back to the basics and just start
Yeah,
fresh, and it's just like you really, really rabbit hole yourself a lot. It seems like, especially like last
yeah,
year when I didn't end up getting a deer, but like missed two
mhm,
nice ones in the same day. Both of them were in the same day, actually, like on November 9th. And it's just like, yeah. They're both on the same piece of public too, and within like 3 hours of each other. Um, and it's like, I feel like if I had one of those years, if I would have gotten that deer last week, it would have almost kind of been nice to get a buck tag filled and then see what really I could learn the rest of the year without having zero pressure on trying
yeah,
to fill a tag. Seems like we put so much pressure on ourselves too
yeah,
and you don't learn as much as you should because you're so focused on
yeah.
not screwing up. You're more focused on not screwing up than actually learning and doing what you're supposed to do.
I used to be like that too, and now I don't put any pressure on myself at all. Well, I try not to. And like that's how I went into last year in Iowa. Like I didn't put any I had no I mean, I didn't care if I didn't fill a tag. Like I was gonna go there to try to kill something really big and it wouldn't bother me at all. I didn't want to shoot something that you could get on somewhere else. And so yeah, if you put a lot of pressure on yourself, it makes it, not as enjoyable and stuff. And same thing for me last year, the lot of, crazy stuff happening too. November, well, I had a lot of encounters with big deer, but I had a real big deer bust me on the 1st of November right behind me. And then on the 6th, I ticked a branch on a really big deer and missed him. And then on the 7th, I shot a really big deer directly underneath my tree. I thought he was stone dead. And I single lunged him, and I can replay it in my head. The arrow sticking out both sides of him, and blood just spraying out of that deer, and I just cannot. I mean, I'm pretty sure he survived, and
Yeah.
so that was just brutal. And then on the on the 11th, I went into a different piece, and I had the deer that I wanted to kill in there. He's like a Boone and Crockett. He literally walked up to me at the base of my tree like 5 yards, and I'm like, man, it was like every day something crazy was happening to me. And then on the 12th, then I got one killed. Um, and then yeah, in Wisconsin, I got on a really big deer uh, and I was gonna try to fill my Wisconsin tag. Oh, because during gun season, I hunt with my bow, and I shot one of the biggest deer I've ever shot in my life, and made a really bad shot on that deer, which I found him a month or whatever later, which sucked, but at least I found him. But
Right.
before I had found the deer, then I missed a really big deer in Wisconsin, the late season, shot right over his back. He ducked like a son of a gun. So
Yep.
yeah, the ups and downs is what makes it, special. And yeah, like you said though, you're not gonna learn as much if you're and
Yeah. It
get
doesn't
what
pay
you want
to,
out of it if you are putting the pressure on yourself like that.
I would say for sure last year, it's still kind of fresh, not hitting one good. You hate to wound a deer in general,
Yeah.
but it really gets at me that like I would much rather miss a deer clean than wound one. But
Yeah.
it's, you can only beat yourself up so much because in the grand scheme of things, I just have to keep telling myself you put yourself in in a position, an opportunity to kill the deer and it should be dead,
Yeah.
and you just, I mean, it's all on you at the end of the day. Like you got your opportunity. You put yourself in a spot to get it done. It
Yeah.
just didn't happen.
It is a good learning opportunity. I went a lot of just, I don't know, maybe I was just fortunate or I just had really a lot of really good shots or whatever, but I went a lot of years where I just every buck that I shot every year, like he would run a little bit and tip over. And I know that's not how it always goes. So it had been a while since I had, I've had some rough tracks before, and it was a good. Now there's a lot of different resources and stuff too, like with when it comes to dogs and the drones and all that stuff, and a lot of times when you think you have one stone dead, I mean, I was still cannot wrap my head around the fact that I didn't kill that deer on November 7th. So it's a good reminder to like do everything right from the moment that arrow is released and maybe like talk it over with, a lot of different people and get some advice, even though you think you're right. Sometimes you're not. And, make the best
That
decision.
That's a big piece of advice. And the last couple of like last year and then this year, talking with guys that, know what a blood trail like looks, knows just by
Right.
an arrow or blood, or you show them a map where you hit them and where you went, where you got last blood. Like
Yeah.
just talking to guys, whether you're going to call a dog or a drone or whatever, get a hold of somebody that is in that line of work and
Right.
get their opinion, at least a professional
Yeah.
opinion. Cause they're not going to try to they're going to try to help you out, that they're in it because they want to
Yep.
help you find your deer. So
Yeah. There's some guys that are really good at stuff like that, and like how high
yeah,
you were in the tree and, if it was maybe just a single lung or, if you think you hit liver or whatever, how, trying to make, or maybe sometimes it's best to push the deer. And
yep,
so, yeah, there's a lot of, you can learn a lot from making mistakes too. I think I've the amount of mistakes I've made over the years on big deer and stuff is just
hmm,
when you put them all together, you're like, holy cow, I can't imagine what
it's
the
a
wall
very
would
high
look like.
percentage. Yeah,
Yeah, but that's what's so awesome about it. I mean, you're not always gonna, get that giant buck, but it's fun though, that's for sure.
yeah. So I probably won't, I mean, I might add something to it if I kind of agree or disagree, but one last question before we get to a couple just more lighthearted, just for
Okay.
fun ones before we get off of here. But the one kind of question that I had, or it'd be nice for you to kind of explain a little bit, like if someone's was like you at one point, or like me more recently, that
Mhm.
is thinking about hunting the hills or wants to give it a try. I know it's hard to give somebody one piece of advice. Whatever you're about to say is not something probably that you can just, okay, I'm going to do that and only that and kill a booner.
Yeah.
But like if you had to give someone one piece of advice that they could use right away, maybe, and they're hunting the hills for the first time, I guess what would be your advice to somebody?
Yeah, so that's a good question. 'Cause, yeah, I remember it was a struggle, starting out and I didn't some of the places that I was hunting too, like, well, when I look back on it, I'm like, "Man, I couldn't have picked harder places to start on." And it was real frustrating, and something that has helped me a lot, though, and I'm so glad that I was like this when I first started, every single say you're gonna tackle the hills for the first year, you're not just going out there, like, for a rut hunt or whatever, and
Mhm,
every on my Onyx, I like every hunt that I had, I'd drop my pin on where I sat, and I probably hunted, I don't know, 50 different, you know, 70 different trees, I don't know, that year.
mhm,
And I would make detailed notes on everything that happened on my access. Did I think my access was clean or not clean? What was, and I'm constantly you have to if you wanna, like, learn, you have to constantly be checking the wind and dropping milkweed and seeing what happens and what are the thermals doing? What was the wind doing that what were they calling for a wind that day? What are the thermals doing when I'm accessing? And throughout the hunt, I would write, "I'm 4 sticks high, I'm facing to the northeast? What are the conditions that day? What's the wind doing in this spot? And what are my thermals doing? And then you can go back and you can look at the terrain on a map or whatever, and you can try to understand why something was happening and what did you see for deer, or did you screw anything up on your access? And then after you have you know years of pins like that, it helps you, first of all, remember exactly, maybe I haven't been in that spot for 4 years. Actually, it just happened the other day. My buddy who lives in Iowa, he's hunting Wisconsin. He's like, yeah, I was thinking about maybe hunting in this area. I'm like, oh, I got a pin right there. Let me tell you what my pin says. And then
Hmm.
read the whole pin to him the first year I ever hunted that place. And it said, like, my thermals are pulling to the, I wasn't expecting my thermals to pull to the north. It still worked out or whatever. The white oaks are raining in here, and it you can look back on that stuff and it really helps. And especially properties that are real complex where the wind does just crazy stuff. And it's just like a constant learning process. So I think that, just keeping notes however you want to do that, I
Hmm.
think is a big thing. Otherwise, there's a lot of people that are serious deer hunters and stuff, and then they just go out and hunt, and they're not actually. The only thing you're learning is kind of just what you saw or whatever, and you don't have an understanding of why what's happening, and
You
especially
don't.
like a big mature buck, because we're lucky here in Wisconsin where we have a good amount of big mature bucks, and there's a lot of places where there's very few. So when you do get to have an encounter or see like a mature buck in person, you should be paying attention to everything that that deer does and why he's doing that, because it's such a good learning opportunity for you to, because they're like a totally different animal than all the other deer. They're so different than them.
Hmm.
So
Right.
when you learn from what they tell you, you know.
It's almost compiling. It's not. It's compiling that information over
Mhm.
years, like you said, because especially in hill country, there's a lot of properties and a lot of terrain features that you can take from one spot to the
Yep.
other, and you can just assume that a lot of those times, especially if you're going in like blind one day, you
Yep.
can assume that it's going to do something at least similar or be
Yep.
prepared for it to do
Sometimes you might
something.
be wrong, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
a lot of
it's a good
times
starting point.
once you do it long enough, you can make some good assumptions. And there's a lot of times where I'll end up being wrong or I'll be off a little bit, but yeah, it's a good starting spot
Yeah,
for
for
sure.
sure. Um, yeah, I think taking notes and putting all that stuff together is definitely. I would agree with you there. I've started doing that the last couple of years is writing stuff down because you can only, like you said, you have 50 or whatever. Most people probably don't have. Even if you have 20 or 30 hunts a year, you're not going to remember every condition and every
Yeah.
detail about every one of those hunts.
Hmm.
And another thing that I was going to mention or just bring back up that you said too is like, don't, when something bad happens, I feel like you learn more from the negative things that happen, even more than you have success. So like,
Yeah.
don't throw away, if something bad happens, don't just say that today is a wash and I'm just going to go home and just like try to forget about it. Like
Hmm.
ask yourself why and ask yourself even in more detail why when something bad happens versus when something good happens.
Hmm.
Because you're going to have 9 times out of 10, it's going to be something bad and not good. So
Yeah.
if you only ask yourself, why did he walk under me and I shoot him and he died? What if you only say, why did he do that? It's,
Hmm.
you're not going to get as much from that. I feel like,
Yep. It usually has to do with his nose. He's
yeah,
tracks you somehow, and a lot of times it's like I already knew that I made the mistake even before I saw the deer, and I'm like, man, I sure hope he doesn't do that. Sure hope he
yeah,
doesn't cross that trail in that spot, because he's gonna crack me. He's gonna hit my ground scent there, and I'm like, man, I knew that was gonna. And
yeah,
it's just learning those things over the years on on picking the tree and picking the where you draw and where you everything. There's so many mistakes that I've made,
yeah,
where I cross an opening at certain, if it's a time where he could be following a doe, where's the doe gonna stop? What's the doe gonna look at? What's,
yeah,
all of those things. So it's
yeah,
a learning process, man. I mean,
Yeah.
Takes time.
You just need an open mind and it's not yeah. You're never gonna be perfect. There's no one that's perfect.
You don't wanna overthink it, but there's a lot of thinking to do, though.
Yeah, it's a never ending battle for sure.
Yeah.
But all right, we'll try to do a couple fun questions here. I try to ask. I've asked it to multiple people, but like, what's I don't know how big you get into gear or anything like that, but like, what's one piece of gear maybe you've gotten since last year that you think you're gonna be excited to use?
Mm, I don't really know. I have gotten a few things, just like nothing really that stands out to me that I'm like super excited to use, I guess. Got some new boots that I really like.
And that's important for the
The
hills.
Danner elk hunters, they're pretty sweet. I actually love those. But yeah, I like to just keep everything really simple and the same, where it took me a few years to really get everything just totally the way I like it. And now I am real stubborn and I have my
Yeah.
lone wolf custom gear stand and everything set up the way I want it. And I just kind of have been rolling with that for the last handful of years now.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But that brings
Yeah.
up a good point too. If you're gonna hunt the hills, get yourself a good pair of
Yeah.
supportive boots. If you're gonna at
Yeah.
least they don't need to be necessarily like out west boots, but that I did get a pair of this year, a pair of I don't know what they're some lacrosse boots, but they're like
Mhm.
their mountain series. And man, just having that little bit of rigidity and
Yeah.
like an actual mountain boot in the hills is just makes a crazy difference. Way more
Mhm.
enjoyable. And then the last one we'll do before we get off here is if you're on a rut hunt all day, what's your go-to like guilty pleasure? Like what snack you bringing? Or are you somebody that brings nothing?
Oh man. Yeah, I don't so I gotta have a Mountain Dew for sure up there. Usually I'll throw in at Quick Trip those PB and J's, those I can't remember what the
Like an
heck.
Uncrustable,
Yeah.
but they're like their brand of them. Yeah.
Yeah, the loudest thing ever to eat up in a tree too, but I'll usually throw a few of those in there. Yeah, I usually don't eat much when I'm like in the tree, which it's hard for me to sit all day too but during the rut I will usually like twice a year maybe or something where I'll sit all day, and you best be in a good spot because otherwise it can get, it's a long day up there, but
You start
I like
talking to
to just be
yourself and then,
down and like moving and like looking in the woods and
yeah,
scouting. Yeah, I love like walking around and stuff. Like for me to
yeah.
sit in a tree for like a few hours is hard enough as it is, but
The amount of people the last couple of years that I've probably pissed off like during the rut where like I
yeah,
get anxious and I'm like, I'm gonna like do a little like scout to see if I like jump a buck in a doe. And then I walk up on somebody and they're whistling at me and it's like, well, I feel like a dick now, but
yeah,
that's just
yeah,
I just have to.
yeah,
You just start
yeah,
talking to
it's fun.
yourself on those days and you question your sanity a little bit sometimes for sure.
Yeah, the amount of times like when you're like at the bottom of a tree or something and you're like got your sticks are on the tree and all of a sudden you hear like something coming, like this happened to me so many times last year in Iowa where I think it was the 8th or no, yeah, it might have been the 6th or something, and I could hear something coming up behind me, and I was, like, in, like, a depression on, like, the top of this ridge, and a spike walked, like, right up behind me, and I just kinda, like, laughed it off. He bounced out of there, and it was, like, a minute later, I turn around and there's like a 160-inch buck in the same spot that spike was, and I was like, "Oh my god!" I'm like, "This is unbelievable. Like, why was I not up in that tree?"
Yeah.
So being just sitting all day, sometimes midday, especially during the rut in the hills, is like the time to be in the tree.
Yeah. There's nothing going on 1 second and then all of a sudden there you are. There's your opportunity. You kind of got to be on your toes a little bit.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
well, that's kind of all I got for now. I'm sure I'll have you on again. Maybe when you knock one
Oh,
down this year, we'll have to
yeah.
go over it and do another one.
You have to give me a holler sometime when you need some dragging help too. gonna
Yeah,
be
you're
right
not
there.
far
I'm sure
away.
we'll probably run into each other out there eventually here soon. So I would
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, same goes to you. If you need help, I got a couple. I'm still young. I can probably drag a couple more yet before I'm crippled.
How old are you?
27.
27. Yeah, yeah, 20th. Lots of dragon life ahead of you.
Yep. Hopefully. The way it's going with missing these deer, I don't know. I need to get the monkey off my back for sure, but I'm sure it's
Yeah.
coming.
Yeah, it's just a confidence thing sometimes where, I always just shoot like an arrow before I'm about to bounce out on Friday or something. I like
And
to just
it's,
it's just like a mental thing, I think.
yeah. And it's more of like after shooting today and knowing that it was the bow that was off and I actually did make a good shot, just like irritates me even more because it should be like totally preventable. Like you said, if you'd have shot an arrow before you went out, you'd have known that,
Yeah,
but
I
you
guess
never know.
it's might irritate you, but at least it kind of also
Makes you
solidifies
feel a
that
little bit better.
maybe
Yeah.
when things happen with equipment and stuff though, where things get I my sight got all jacked up last year in the late season when I missed that deer as well. Actually, I just got it switched out and new sight and everything because it was like bent so bad. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you wipe out or you fall or you're lowering out of the tree and something happens. You never know, stuff happens. So
Yeah. Well, I know you kind of post sometimes, especially scouting, which I feel like you give a lot of good tidbits or people can take
mhm.
stuff away from that. So you're for sure on Instagram
Yeah.
and maybe YouTube, but just give everybody your handles and I'll put them in the description. So if people want to check you out, they can.
Yeah, I just my Instagram is TonyVA3. Yeah, and I'll put stuff on my story and stuff like that quite a bit. I like just sharing, what I got going on. I like seeing what other guys got happening and stuff like that. And I do have a YouTube channel as well, which is Tony Van Asten. It's pretty much just like coyote trapping and shed hunting. I don't really put a whole lot of deer hunting stuff on there. So, but yeah, that's about it.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you joining me. And if anybody
Yeah,
has any questions regarding the podcast, send them to your Instagram. If they
yeah,
ask me, I'll get
yeah.
them to you. We'll get them answered. So,
Yeah, sounds good. That was fun. Thanks for having me on, man.
yep. Thanks everybody for listening.